population is formerly homeless, so housing is something that touches me kind of closely, which is why my hand went up quick with housing. Basically, one of the things we talk about, picture the homeless as housing being a human right. You know, in a city where we live with 38,000 people in the shelter system, it's kind of absurd in a wealthy city like this, and that's not counting the untold numbers on the street. There's a fake little calculation that is used by the federal government to count people on the streets. That number of 38,000 is probably closer to 100,000 if you look at the number realistically. And so with that, there's a process that's taking place in most of the urban centers around this country called gentrification. And gentrification has a path. That path is gentrification leads to displacement, which leads to homelessness, which leads to criminalization, which is why most of the social justice organizations in this city realize that they have to come together. And it is time for our elected officials to understand that they need to work together to eradicate this problem. And by that I say, while I have a whole bunch of Obama stuff on me, I'm not so sure. I believe in his ideology, but I'm not so sure that he'll get my vote. He'll get my vote when he starts talking about area-specific information, area-specific stuff, housing in New York City, which is a little different than other areas of the country. And when I say that, one of the biggest problems we go through in this city is there is a large population and there is less land available than the housing stock that is needed. We can't build flat in the city, we have to build up. So air rights become important and become expensive. And people go out of their way to pay top dollar to build up. Which is why a lot of us get stuck out on the street or a lot of us pay high rents. All right? They're going to go up, and that's the only way you can go in the city. So when you go up, the rents are $1 million. You get condos for $1 million, $1.5 million. We all see the signs draped all over the city. The guys very proudly put that draping up. Yeah, new building coming up, condo for $1 million, $1.5 million. One of the things that we need, that we have in the city that exists, all right, that is as housing stock is public housing. We don't respect it enough in this country or this city. I recently did a panel with Ed Ott from the Central Labor Council. He's the executive director. He's a man who grew up in public housing in New York, and when he speaks, he tells you the value of public housing in this city. And it is still disrespected. It was criminalized. When it first came upon, it was a place for America to go, prosper, get your life together, and to go up. But all of a sudden, it became criminalized. If you live in public housing, you're a criminal. If you live in public housing, you're somebody of color, you don't want to work, you're worthless. Exactly. You're on welfare. You're looking for a payout. That's not it. What we're looking to do, public housing, we realize the value in public housing. We need to stop the demolition of public housing. We need Obama to understand the importance of stopping the demolition of public housing in this city. We need him to understand the importance of one-for-one replacement. When it is destroyed, bring it back so that people aren't displaced. What happens, and it's played out very well in Miami in an area called the Scott Carver Houses down in Liberty City in Miami. From about a 15 square block area, public housing was torn down and the people were forced to move. When they came back, about 40,000 residents were moved out. When they came back, they put in 5,000 units of single-family housing. The people that were living there can't afford to live there anymore. They're displaced. So we need to have one-for-one replacement when we move somebody out. Stop the deliberate neglect. What's happening in a lot of public housing around the country is they let it fall into a state of disrepair, and they say, we have to tear it down because it fell into disrepair. I say, bullshit. Rehabilitate it, do the right thing, put the resources and the money into it to bring it back to where it should be so that people can live there and people can live there at a reasonable cost.
I'm not as educated on housing, so
okay.
Can you help before you go further?
Sure.
What role is federal? What role is from the state? What role is the city? It's unclear who controls what.
Okay, in New York, well, public housing in the country is under the umbrella of HUD, Housing and Urban Development. They come up with the funds to construct public housing, to run public housing. Individual localities set up public housing authorities. NYCHA in New York City. The New York City Housing Authority accepts that money from HUD and has this organization run public housing in New York City. But it's run basically off the funding that they get from the federal government, with supplements coming from the state government and coming from the city government. The majority of that money comes from the federal government. So the federal government can dictate what happens in that housing.